What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Hybrid Ministry Show. In this episode, I am going to be talking with my friend Josh Boldman. He works over at Download Youth Ministry. He does all the stuff with Sidekick, and he does stuff with Co-Leader. And Josh, honestly, I believe is one of, if not the greatest, programming specialist for youth ministries in America. I'm really excited for you to hear it because some of his ideas are absolutely fantastic. But what we're going to do is we're going to be debating between in-person and digital, and you're going to see me try to lean everything back towards hybrid. And what we're doing is he's bringing a youth ministry programming sheet, and he's saying, this is what we're doing. How do we make it digital? How do we honor the people that might be watching online? And more, I try to say, how can we make it hybrid? And so for those of you who are new here, hybrid is taking your in-person, taking your digital, and finding a way to meet that intersection. And in most cases, I think that is at the intersection of students' cell phones. And so you're going to see this debate between digital versus in-person. So welcome to the show, the one and only Josh Boldman. Well, what's up, everybody? I'm here this morning with my good friend Josh Boldman, and we have a little bit of a unique idea. So Josh, tell the people what we're doing.
Okay, so as anyone watching / listening knows, Nick Clason is all about the hybrid ministry, right? Making sure that the people that are at home are still connecting with what's happening in the room.
Yeah.
I spent most of my ministry developing and leading services in the room, and then COVID happened and things got crazy, and we did a full pendulum swing to where we did everything online.
Yeah.
And then we came back and suddenly it was like, wait, are we still doing online, or are we what are we doing? And so it was the constant challenge of trying to not just create something in the room and just stream it, right? How to make it more interactive. So today what we're doing is I have got a service that I've created for in the room.
Yep.
And I'm going to walk us through it, and Nick is going to, in real time, because he has not seen it. Now, you guys got to know, I was like, dude, do you want this ahead and we could just fake it? And he's like, no. Too much integrity, way too much.
Yeah.
And so he's going to try, as we go, we're going to think through each section and try and figure out what is it that we can do to make this something that people who are not in the room, but the students at home, and I'm curious, Nick, if this is, maybe something we look at is it if they're watching live or even if they're watching later, how does that impact their ability to participate? So.
Yeah, and to be clear, the way that I define hybrid is it's the two pieces, so your in-person plus your digital, and it's them coming together. And so there may be elements, I think a little more what I might try to do is take what is going on in the room and find a way to allow it to exist beyond that moment.
Yeah.
Or find a way to intersect a student in a spot like their phone that will last beyond the time that you dismiss them to go home. So they can take it home. Youth ministry, typically pre-digital, could only exist in the few hours that our church doors were open. And so now we have the advantage of being able to access, sometimes it's, a curse versus a blessing, but we have the advantage of being able to access and have conversation with and disciple our students at a time that Wednesday night programming or Sunday morning or Sunday night programming isn't happening. And how can we take what we're doing in the room and offer it to students beyond that moment? Or even in your place, in what you were saying, maybe even as a replacement of it. So, like Josh said, I haven't seen any of this. I am a little nervous right now. Earlier, I was like, I'm fine, but now I'm a little nervous.
As I was putting it together, I got to be totally honest. I'm there are parts of it where I was like, oh, I can totally see how this is going to work. And then there are other parts where I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do. How this is going to go.
Yeah, so bear with me, stream of consciousness, and it may not be perfect and polished, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. So, all right, let's do it. What is the first part of your service?
The 5-minute countdown, right? Okay, so we've got students are in the room. They're playing 9 Square. They're playing Gaga Ball. They've got
They're not paying attention to the
arcade
countdown.
games. Nobody cares what. Like someone spent a lot of time creating a countdown that ultimately no one cares about until it like reaches 10 seconds. But there's a lot of interaction happening, and so like trying to think through, is there something where we're trying to connect with students that are not in the room, or is there something we can do in the room to help students know, hey, it's not just you here. There's more than that going on.
Yeah, so one of the things about 5-minute countdowns that I actually hate, and I know that as talking to a guy who works for Download Youth Ministry, and that's where a lot of the money is made and a lot of 5-minute countdowns are sold, I actually prefer, which by the way, talking to you right now, let this be an unofficial Sidekick feature request.
Love it. Yep.
Because right now in Sidekick, you can loop your announcements, right? You can loop some like graphic slides, and I actually prefer that to be the 5-minute countdown with just the 5-minute countdown overlaid in the corner, so that all of the announcements that you're announcing and trying to let your students know about are happening is being seen on the screen. Because if you think about it, if the majority of people don't start paying attention to the screen until it's down to less than a minute, they missed all of the stuff that was looping ahead of time. Right. And the stuff that's looping ahead of time is the stuff that you want them to know about. And so whether it's hybrid, whether it's digital only, or whether it's in person, like whatever you're announcing, I think you should leave that stuff on the screen as long as humanly possible. And so if you're able to put a little 5-minute countdown in the corner or even across the middle, but I try to design my slides in such a way that I think like, all right, I'm going to do the left corner this time and keep stuff out of the left corner. And so then we may have like our current series graphic. We may have an upcoming event. Like at the time of recording, we got our costume party coming up. And Christmas is on the horizon. So those types of things are there. But woven in my announcements, I might try to do, what we do right now is like I advertise our online baptism course, which is a YouTube playlist. And there are so many times, like almost all of my slides at this point have a QR code. Do you remember when the QR code was dying? Like, no one used it.
So lame. Like I remember having this conversation in a church staff meeting where it was like, we could put a QR code on it. And I remember somebody being like, does anyone use those? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
And then, but now how else would we get the menu at restaurants? Like,
bro, I think I had the same meeting because during COVID, the question was, how do we communicate things without handing things to people and passing germs? Yeah. And I suggested a QR code, and I quote from our communications team, "We will never use a QR code." And I kid you not, not 2 weeks later, what was on the screen, because it was the only way to do it, and it made a comeback. And I've always thought QR codes were brilliant. They didn't get adopted early on, but now they're back, and they make so much sense. So, we have a subscription to like a QR code builder. I get like 160 different like unique QR codes, and so I abuse that. And so our baptism course, our text list, like all these things. And so if a student during the 5-minute countdown isn't playing 9 Square and they're kind of sitting already in the service or don't have anyone to talk to, or something on the screen does happen to sort of like catch their attention, they can pull their phone out, they can scan the QR code, and they can get to it later, whether that be signing up for our text group, which will allow them access to them to send them encouraging messages or even just announcement type things, or even like discipleship related things like, hey, I'm ready to take a next step about baptism. Let me explore more about that through the baptism playlist. So,
love it.
So there you go. That's what I would do.
All right. So at 0, usually what we'll do is we'll jump right into the first song, right? And so our group, we had a live band. So that was it's one of those things where every time you talk about having a student band, this could go one of 2 very different ways. And I will say, like, I've been really blessed to be at churches where we had a really good, like, solid student-led band that, had a track record of what I would say is in the neighborhood of 82%. Like, okay, this is going to be a 4 out of 5 that it's going to go well. So it would hit pretty well, and that was kind of in the room. That was like the we're starting, like, and so everybody is like getting into their seats, getting
music
ready.
hits,
like, yeah. And so, I mean, obviously in the room, you got lyrics on the screen, we got some cameras going and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like for worship on the live stream, for people after, like, are you like, is there anything different that you feel like you can do to set up to help, again, the room feel like they're a part of what's happening at home and vice versa?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas. Let me first say, Josh, you might find this surprising. So I've been in youth ministry for 14 years, and the church I'm at now, I've been here 2 years. This is the first church in, I guess by the time I moved here, it was like 12 years. So in my first 12 years of ministry, I did not have a regular live worship band.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere I've been prior, like, for one reason or another, the band didn't really, like, take root. And I didn't try to kill it, but I also didn't have a massive... that's not my bent. I'm not a worship guy. I can't play any instruments, and so I'm not trying to get that thing up and off the ground. And so,
for sure,
we've had worship at camps and retreats and at like one-off worship nights and stuff like that, but not on like a regular like rhythm. And so, let me just say to those of you out there, and the majority of churches, right, like that probably don't have a live stream. Let's just be honest, and you might not even have quality work, like musicians, to pull off worship. Like, I feel you can be the judge of this, but I feel as though I did really good youth ministry for 12 years without a band. And I don't even know, like, in a typical youth service, it's a little more like geared towards outsiders oftentimes. I don't know that getting up there and singing about the blood of Jesus is often the most welcoming thing for an outsider, and so sometimes you may be shooting yourself in the foot, all in an effort to try and copy what you think youth ministries should be doing, which is worship. And so you can program around worship. It's going to require a lot more creativity, which is essentially the basis of this episode, like finding ways to be a little bit more creative with your programming and whatnot. So I'll only say that as an encouragement. Don't feel like you have to jam a worship band into like a space if it's not working, not fitting, the context isn't right, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I've always found like we were at places where we tried doing the the lyric videos, that kind of thing, and it would work in like seasons, but there were times where we're just like, okay, this feels like we're showing them a video that they are begrudgingly watching for 5.5 minutes, and then they sit down, and it's like, okay, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, don't force that. Yeah, that, I think that probably hurts more than it helps if it feels like you're forcing it. Yeah.
So back to answer your specific question about what to do about worship. Like, I will say, when I'm thinking about in-person versus online, online, in my opinion, is a fantastic content delivery system. Like podcasts, sermons can be podcasts, sermons can be YouTube videos. Like, that is what the internet is made for, right? What in-person is made for, that the internet can't always overcome, is certain things like community. And one of those things I think it has a hard time overcoming is live in-person worship, shoulder to shoulder. Like, watching during COVID, watching worship online versus watching worship in the room was a completely different experience. I sat in my recliner. I did not stand. I did not sing. I maybe like sung under my breath, but I'm not getting up in my living room and like worshiping like I would at church. And so that is, one of the, in my opinion, advantages of in person. I will say a couple ideas. One, during COVID, our church, I thought, was fantastically innovative, and our worship was not just like a band on a stage. It was like, it was shot almost like a music video. And especially during COVID, all the individual musicians, like, they recorded all their parts and then they sent them back, and then the editors like spliced it all together. Wow. It was so good. And of course that wasn't sustainable, but when they pulled the plug on that, that wasn't a youth ministry thing, but when they pulled the plug on that, I thought that was a big mistake, because it was very good, and they went back to like an easier route, and I felt like it took away some of what made our online presence pretty good.
Oh yeah.
But for the kids in the room, for the hybrid, like, hey, how do we like let this attitude of worship live beyond? I mean, very simply, like you can create a greatest hits like Spotify playlist of all the best worship songs that you and your students that they love. I especially like to do this for camps or retreats. I'll create the playlist even ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I'll like float it out and I'll sneak it out via like our text list or our social media so that people can grab a hold of it. And so even if in the room, if you wanted to have one of those little Spotify, it's not a QR code, but it's similar to it. Like you scan Spotify's version of it and you can join the playlist. And you know, it would even be cool. I'm coming with this idea on the fly. You could create like a collaborative like playlist, like our church's favorite worship songs, and it's a public playlist, and anyone with a Spotify account can go in and they can add their favorite worship songs. And then you just got to keep that kind of front and center, like, hey, throughout the week, like, hey, don't forget we got this, collaborative worship playlist. If, you want to worship God throughout this week, take a listen.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Something that we did during COVID was we would ask at the end of the service to say like, hey, if there are songs that really speak to you, like we want to lead you in those songs. So it was kind of like hey, this week let us know what songs you'd like to do next week, like that kind of a thing. I mean, I don't know that was like super well received, but it was something, right? It was at least something that allowed a little bit back and forth.
Yeah.
So we would usually do one song right at the top, and then we would go into our hosting time.
Mm-hmm.
So where we would have two volunteers, usually an adult and a student. If not, it would be two adults. And I will be the first to say it was always hit or miss, like every time. And because
it's all about that person's personality.
Oh yeah, it's like because like people who are super nervous on stage, I totally get it. But it would be like you'd sit down with them and be like, they would want to know what is the content of the announcement. Right. And it's like, okay, well, I can tell you that, like, and for sure, we'll make sure you got that. And for them, it was like, as long as I know the information, I'm good. And it's like, no, there is more to this game than that, friend. But one of the ways that we found to kind of help that process was we started doing the wheel of announcements using
I love that.
Sidekick. And the best part, right, is you can game the system, right? You can tell it which one is. So we would have, like, say if there were 4 announcements, and that's too many. I'd say 3 max. Yep. But like, so whatever number of announcements there were, we would always have one more. And that wheel wedge was always like, everyone gets $100 or, whatever. And so like it would.
You have to make sure that the person in your booth.
Oh man, you have to trust that person, or that could cost you dearly.
Yeah, like
oh man. But it was great because it really was random.
Yeah.
But especially when it would get down to the last 2 wedges, and it was like half the wheel is everyone gets $100, and the other one's like, church picnic or whatever, and you spin it and it just like slowly goes, it's like, and it was great. Like, but it kept, because the students in the room, they don't care about half the announcements you're giving, but it was kind of fun every time it would pass the $100 thing, that they'd want to see it. And so we would just change it to a new thing every week. And sometimes it would be they'd win a prize, or there would be like, something embarrassing that the person on stage would have to do. But
that's a definite way to gamify it so that it's more interesting than. Yep. I have an episode that I talked about, like, stop posting announcements to social media. Like, no one cares, and no one is getting on social media to know what's going on in your youth ministry. Though you do want them to know. Like, it's just it's the wrong, like, medium for it. And so a lot of times in the same way, we do announcement times a disservice in our church. Like, we do need to get these things across. Yeah. But I think that, this isn't a direct answer to the question, but like, how do you hybridize your announcements, or like, how do you get your announcements across in like a different way than just like the host moment or the announcement moment in your planning center service rundown? Like, you use the mediums all throughout the rest of your like repertoire that you have to your advantage. So you can post those. I do say you can post announcements to social media. You just have to be creative with it. Like one of my favorites is, I'll throw the link down below, but like those transition style videos. Have you seen the one where the dude's getting speared in the back by like a bull and then people are diving into like their rows of chairs? Like, do those. Like you can still tell people on social media about what's going on in your church. Just make it actually creative. Don't just post your cooked up Canva graphic. Like no one wants that.
Right. You ready for something I just thought? Like this is like top of the head right here. All right, so you could, during your announcement time, you could record that video with your students. Like, so that would be in the moment. You're like, hey, here's what we're gonna do. We got this thing coming up. We want to let everybody know about it. Here's, what it's gonna be like. Let's do this real quick and just get
what else could you do? You could random name generator your contestant. You could then get them up there, and then what does that do? That's a nod to your socials. And so while you're announcing, you throw a graphic on screen that says, we're social. It's got a QR code. It's a link tree of all of your social handles. And the people in the room be like, hey, go follow this because we're going to post this tomorrow. And that's been, like, that's one of the things we've done in our youth ministry. We've created a social team and a social challenge component of every night of our youth ministry. And so students know they can go into our studio. We have a studio. Like, it's bougie. All right, I get it. You can see the tour down below. But, like, they know they can go in there and they can get on camera with their friends, and then eventually they're going to be the star on our social media.
Love it.
And it helps create, like, a little more appetite for it than just the youth pastors being, like, the talent on social media. No one wants that, right?
No.
Unless we're looking stupid.
Are you saying we're not as cool as we think we are? Is that what?
It depends how you think of yourself.
That's true.
You know, if you're like very self-aware, then you probably know you're not very cool. You're in your 30s or 40s. Let's be honest.
Okay, so then we transition into a game, and this was always like, so we had two different things that we've tried off and on. One is the winner of the game gets to spin a wheel for a prize, and it's just numbers on a wheel, and then we had like shoe boxes, and it was like you win box number 7, and then you go get the box, open it up, and it's either a great prize or a terrible prize, something like that.
I love that, and I'm probably stealing that now that you just said that.
Honestly, it was pretty cool. Like,
that's like a YouTube video right there. That's like Ryan's World, you know?
Yeah, and what it let you do is it let you not always have to keep buying awesome prizes.
Yes.
Because, oh man, it was so like at the very beginning, we would tell people like, so like we'd change them out every quarter or something like that, and it would be like, hey, just so you know, in these 12 boxes, there are a $10 Apple gift card. There's and just you tell them kind of, hey, here are a couple of the big things that are in here. Yeah. And then just as you get it, 1 week a person rolls number 5, great, they get box 5, so then you just take that one off the list. And so you don't even have to like buy a new prize every week. You just have to have it all loaded up front. And
you just put like old crap that's laying around in your church into those boxes too.
So good. So good. Right? It could be just honestly anything. It doesn't even have to be anything good, right?
It says you're voted most likely to need coffee. Like that one. That is ours.
The other thing that we started doing was we did the impossible shot. And so the deal was like the traditional impossible shot has always been like, if you are here for the first time or you were the person who invited that person for the first time, you get to take a shot at this impossibly small target, and if it goes through, you win a prize. But what we started doing is the winner of the game got to take the shot, and so it even made it like more, your chance of winning the game was small, and then that makes it even smaller. And we would add every week. We would add to the bucket of what do you win if you get the impossible shot. And so like it started out with it's a bunch of candy. Okay, then it's like one of every candy, and then it's like all right, a gift card, and so you just kind of slowly build it until somebody wins it. Was one of the things we did. But I'm curious, like, so the impossible shot, right, is a great example. So we would, like, that's what I set up in this one was winner of the game, and the game would be like, where's the ball? We're doing DYM 100. Probably by the time this is out, we will have already done it. So go sign up for next year. But one of the things that I made was a game called Where's the Ball Obscure Sports Edition.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
Link down below. Go give Josh those royalties. My goodness.
Yeah, no, it'll be... Actually, it'll be free in Sidekick. So if you have... Yeah, it'll be one of those, like, click on the little free button at the top and a little red dot pops up and you're like, oh my goodness, it's free. But it's like
I need to look at that more frequently than I do.
Yeah, you do.
I don't.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there. So the sports I've got are curling. I've got axe throwing. I've got have you ever heard of cycle ball?
No.
It's basically like soccer, but you play on bicycles and you use the front wheel of the bike to kick the ball. It's insane.
Sounds insane, and I feel as though I would die.
Horribly dangerous. The other one is unicycle hockey, which is exactly what it sounds like, and it is magical. But that is, so one of the things like that, when I first started making the Where's the Ball games, right, that was very much you had to be in the room to make it work. Right. But then with Sidekick, we've done where it's voting now. And so we worked really hard, especially during COVID and after, to make it where our, when we were live streaming, that it was as low lag as possible. And so people at home really could also vote in. And we got it, down to like, I think you can, without too much trouble, you can get the lag down to like 3-4 seconds. Not too bad. Yeah. And so we would do that where you could see on the screen, people voting, that kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, so we did that. But then, so Impossible Shot, that is a in the room phenomenon. Yep. Is there anything you can do to make that something that someone at home feels like they're able to connect with, or is it really just a show the highlight and they get to celebrate if it happened?
Yeah, I mean, like if it's a true live stream, which again, like I said earlier, not a lot of youth ministries have like full live streaming capabilities. And so even what we do and what I recommend to a lot of people is like most people are not interested in tuning in to your full youth service. Like, so we pre-record all of our messages for YouTube into like a 12-minute like teaching type of deal. So like that's what I would recommend. Like that's what people are getting on YouTube and the internet for. Is there a way to reclaim a live stream Impossible Shot type moment? Like there might be like a sort of like voting type thing. Like, do you think that they can get it or not? You're going to need a moderator in your chat to like initiate that poll. So like, let's say you won and it's like, congratulations to Josh. Will Josh hit the Impossible Shot? Yes or no? And they can vote there in the poll, like in the chat or something like that. I think like YouTube or maybe Facebook has some of that like functionality built in. But what I might do like, as a alternative to the Impossible Shot, or depending on your game, right? Like, one of my favorite styles of games is creating like you can do like those like sculpture building types of games or like let students in teams create something together. Nice. And then you can like take pictures of all of them and they can vote on them either.
Oh, I like that.
On Sidekick live in the room, or what we've done in the past is we've said, hey, these are going to be on our Instagram stories. Go vote on them. And then we'll announce the winner on Sunday, which is like our next meeting time or whatever.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And then the winning group will get a pizza party next week.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so, like those are different. Those are just different ideas, obviously. So to answer your question, I would try to just create like a poll type of thing. I think that's the best idea I got off the top of my head right now.
That's good.
But some other like ideas. And let me jump in and say, in the land of prizes, another great like free to you prize is so our setup is round tables, and so oftentimes your table is your team in whatever sort of thing you're competing in, game, trivia, whatever. And so a lot of times we'll let the winning team go sit in what we call the best seats in the house. And so we'll put some like couches and like nicer seats than like the tables there. And then we'll just stuff that area full of like snacks and drinks. And they get to sit there during like the teaching time. And oftentimes we have all the snacks and drinks on hand and it's just couches that we have laying around, but they're nicer than tables. And so you can give students that opportunity. It's similar to like your box of prizes type of thing. So
in the box of prizes, one of the things we learned was I kept forgetting to refill the boxes. And so what we started putting in the boxes as a prize was pizza party for your small group next week. Like, so it's always like, hey, you won it right now, but you're going to get it next week. So it would get kids to come back next week. But also, if like, say that small group won and they had 5 kids that night, next week they're going to have 15. Like, it is just, it's crazy because they know, like, oh yeah, we won the prize. Yeah. So
and then you didn't order enough pizza.
Ever. It's just it's something you'll see in the Facebook group a lot is the DYM Facebook group is how many pizzas should I order for a thing? I always order too much because then it's lunch for me for the rest of the week. Like, it's like, that's how a little secret. I think that might be embezzlement. I'm not sure now that whatever. It's okay. Okay,
we can cut that part out.
Yeah, whatever. All right, so then we go from there. We might at that point do another song, but then we're gonna go to a bumper video and into the lesson. Now the lesson that I'm doing this week is gonna be on Peter walking on water.
Okay.
And the idea is, the big idea for it is that your first step is meant to be followed by a second step. So it's like the whole idea is like momentum and things like that. So the way that we would do this, and we did this, and I can send you pictures of how we did it. We built this, basically like this trough, and we covered it in plastic sheets, and then we put a tarp over that, and then we filled it with cornstarch and water.
Nice.
And if you put it at the right consistency, it's a substance called oobleck, or a non-Newtonian fluid.
Okay.
Which means if you just touch it, it's liquid, but if you hit it, it's solid. Like it's crazy.
No way.
It's the coolest thing ever. Yeah. And so what that means is if you get the right consistency, if you run on it, you can run completely on top of it. You will not sink.
No way.
Fine. But any point that you stop, you will sink right in. Like it's over. And so what we would do is that's the idea, right? So Jesus calls him out on the water. He starts walking. It's working, but then as soon as he stops, he looks down. He starts to sink, and so Jesus gives him, a bit of a talking to, and and so but then he reaches out, pulls Peter back up. They climb back in the boat, and so what we're trying to tell the kids is like, hey, yeah, we want everybody to take a first step. But you know what else we want you to do? We want you to, like, first step gives you momentum. Just keep taking steps. Like, keep going. Yeah. And so the way we would end this service is and this is probably in the room going to be chaos. And I'm very comfortable with that, especially like because it's going to end with communion. Right, and so that, which is not, I've been in different groups where we've done communion every week. I've done it with groups where we do it like literally hardly ever, and and so this was one where we did it every week. But what I would do is I would set that that trough up so that students, in order to go and get the communion elements, get to run across the thing to go get the communion. So it's like, hey, you're chasing after Jesus. You're taking this first step and you're not stopping. So like I said, normally like communion is a fairly like somber time. This would not be that because it would be a bit chaotic. And they'd be taking their shoes off and they'd running across, but then they get the elements and they would take them right there, and then they go back to their seat. And so we'd have to figure out stuff for the students to do when they're back in their seat, because that it's
gonna take a minute.
They'd watch and all that, but I mean it wouldn't be like super engaging. But but the moment of running across, they absolutely loved it. Like I mean it was just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So like, and then we would dismiss the small groups. But it's that type of experience is really like a in the room thing, like because so one of the things I've always said about like trying to be creative in your programming is like you get to say yes to things that no one else ever says yes to. And so like this, like in order to do this, we had to buy like 150 pounds of cornstarch from like a food grade service company. Like it was just like
they bring it in on a pallet.
Oh, it was crazy. Like it was absolutely insane. But no one is going to be able to do that at home. I mean, they can do it like, and so like one of the things is we would like walk them through like how to make it at home in a very smaller scale. Yeah. I think it is one way to do that. But I don't know. Like I feel like in that moment, that having an experience like that just like creates a core memory, right? It's like it locks in. They're going to remember the teaching, if ever so slightly, because of the experience. And so, like, I don't know,
right.
like, try and get your thoughts on what do you do to help someone who's either experiencing it later or experiencing it at home?
Yeah.
How do they lock in that same idea? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, for sure. So once again, like I said, there are certain things that in person that digital can't do to like replace, and frankly vice versa. But this is a prime example. So here's the shame, Josh. Like, this is why you're the best youth ministry programmer in America, because what a title, right? The fact is this: like, if all your students are coming to in the room is a lecture style sermon, they can 100% get that online, right?
And it'll be better.
Exactly.
Let's call it what it is, right?
The online
there's somebody
experience
doing
will
it
be better if it's just lecture style.
Yeah.
And so again, here's our strategy. If we were doing that, I would totally do that in the room. We don't live stream, and so instead of trying to replicate a live stream moment, now if you were in a position where you had to do that, I think, what Josh's point is I would try to get a camera on the actual like trough thing so people can watch that, and then maybe encourage people with like text on screen to go get some elements so that they too can take, communion, and then give them the opportunity if they want to build it. They're not going to probably be able to do that like right in the moment. Like, do they have enough cornstarch? Do they have a bowl? Like, you know what I mean?
Probably not.
So what we would do in our context now is we would film a talk about Peter walking on water for YouTube. Direct to camera, 15 minutes or less, really, really highly edited. And so if I wanted to use like B-roll or anything like that from like The Chosen as I'm illustrating this Peter point, like that's going to be on screen. It's not just going to be me talking. We're going to use the medium of video that we have to our advantage and do certain things like, so this isn't in the same vein, but one time I was talking about how like God knows the big picture. And on screen, I said, does anyone know what this is? Comment down below if you know it. And it was like a super zoomed in, like grainy, pixelated something or other. And then in the next frame, it like zoomed out and you could see this like beautiful painted canvas. And the point I made in that was like, God's painting a picture and you can't see the outcome. He's in control. And that's just an example of, and you could do that in the room with like a slide, but that's just an example of something that you can do with a video. And so I wouldn't try to recreate that moment because it's probably unreplicatable, right? But I would create something that at the end of the day, your bottom line was the first step's always followed by a second step. I think you can teach that and deliver that online for anyone who's not there. And that's, again, one of the reasons we don't do like a quote live stream is because A, we don't have the equipment, but B, if you miss out on it, you sort of feel like it's over. Instead, like, what is YouTube great for? Like, I get on YouTube, I don't know about you, but I get on there when like I have a clog in my sink and I search how to fix clog in sink. Like in the same way,
a water heater based on YouTube and a skylight.
See,
it's
that's
bad
what I'm saying.
I think I broke the law. Man, I've admitted to doing this now twice.
Don't worry, that's the power of editing. But I'll probably leave it in. But a student might get on and be like, ask a question, like a tough question, like, is such and such a sin? How do I grow in my faith? How do I start making disciples? How do I whatever? And so that's what I'm trying to do on YouTube is I'm trying to title and tag my videos in such a way that like they're going to be found in search from a teenager or anyone for that matter, but particularly a teenager who's asking big questions about life and about faith. And so you're doing one thing in the room, but online's, they're both hopefully accomplishing the same ultimate goal. Nice. And that's where I would say like the difference of hybrid is not just digital, right? It's both. And so a good in-room experience is going to like be worth its weight in gold. We don't have to try to like replace it. What I will say, a great hybrid experience for teaching, if you haven't checked this out, one of my favorite resources is like the YouVersion live events. And so built in, woven into the YouVersion Bible app, there's a section called Live. And so you can make it be, quote, live when your service is live. And you can put your outline basically in there. And what's great about it is you can also link a Bible reading plan. So I'll always link a Bible reading plan at the end of any message. So like in that one, I would link something about taking next steps, like a 4 or 5 day Bible reading plan for a student to jump into if they wanted. And we always have a next steps form. We have a digital next steps form that just lives in perpetuity on our website. And so at the bottom, second to bottom of my YouVersion live event, I put a link. Say, you ready to take a next step? Let us know. We want to take it with you. And then it's a link, and it can go external. It can go external to anything. So you can also link like camp signups or retreat signups or DNow signups. Like you can link to anything, and that's a great way for a student hybrid to like take something and they can save that event and they can get back to it later. They can like take private notes on it. So it's something that they're in the room, but they're taking notes on their device. And now later, if they have a question or whatever, they want to like continue on in their faith, like that's a fantastic, we call it digital notes. Like it's the YouVersion live events platform, but we like have branded it like digital notes. And as I said, it's a QR code. So I just swapped the same QR code, and in our tables in our room, we have a little like standing placard thing, and it says follow along for the digital notes, and students can scan it and it'll pull open that week's YouVersion live event. So it changes every week based on the particular thing. So that would be a hybrid solution to like the content in the room. Your ending piece is fantastic, right? And so I don't think you want to try to like replicate that in someone's house necessarily, but I think you could pre-film that if kids don't make it, or if a kid down the road comes to your youth ministry that wasn't there that night, or they weren't attending your church yet and they have a question about taking a next step, you can be like, hey, this is my favorite part about putting your stuff on YouTube. You can be like, hey, we actually have a fantastic teaching on it. I'll send you the link. It's right here. And you don't have to say, oh, man, you should have been here last month. We did this really cool thing. Like they can still have access to it. So
something that I was thinking of with this particular type thing is filming like a behind the scenes, like as you're making it. Like I think could be really powerful. Or even as students have run across it, like just catching them right at the end and being like, hey, can you, what'd you know, how do you remember this? Or what was this experience like? And just having like, you know, featuring a couple of them, I think could go a long way. For sure.
That's one of my strategy, like in my like social media calendar, like Wednesday night, which is our youth night, I film I post like a recap video of what we did. And so for that night, that might be what I do, is just focus on the trough moment, right? Or if you don't have anything that's as like unique or powerful as that, you can just get little snippets of the whole night. So you can get kids playing nine square, kids worshiping, the band worshiping, the pastor teaching, and then you take 7 to 12 clips, you put them in something like TikTok, it'll auto cut it for you, and boom, you got a post that takes you less than a minute,
Love it. So, dude, so good. Look at us. We figured it out. We figured it out. That's so good. This is really fun.
Is that the end of your service?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we would dismiss to small groups, and something that we did there that trying to engage outside of just the small group time was like we would send discussion questions to parents, you know, like, we had like a reminder text sign up that was like, hey, here's what we're talking about tonight. Here are 3 questions for the ride home, or for the, and so whether a kid was there and on the ride home, or if, they missed that night, there's still, their parents still got a conversation starter of some kind, that I think was pretty good.
And that's the advantage I've found in pre-filming as well. There's so many advantages. Like at first it was like, so history for us, like we did, just like you, a full live like YouTube show during COVID. Like it was a youth group for YouTube. But eventually, as restrictions lifted, that grew tired and people didn't want to just get on and sit behind a computer or live stream, especially during the summer of 2020. They're like, I'm just going to go out where I apparently can't catch COVID as long as I'm outside. And so that started to engagement with that and the shininess of it. Initially it was like this really interesting thing, but by episode 28, it's like kind of lost some of its luster. But there was still something really cool. It was like there was a teaching component, but it was all the way at the end of the video. And so when I came here, and readjusted my thought process a little bit. I was like, the teaching is so valuable. Like,
right.
I want kids to be able to hear about the truth of Jesus, and I want them to be able to have access to it online. How can we do that and still have some of the other kind of components that we did during COVID, but make it maybe a little more adaptable to 2022 and then thus 2023, 2024. And so that's where we do our teaching, long form on YouTube, and everything else is shorts. I read something the other day, Josh, like 90% of the internet's traffic now is shorts, TikToks, or Reels. And so that's what we film in our social challenges. We just film short content, games or challenge style videos, and we let our students be the heroes in those stories. And they love it. Like when they see one of their things posted, like they'll text me and be like, that was really good. And I'm like, yeah, it was.
Nailed it.
Nailed
my
it.
favorite. So our son is 16, and he has this thing, this joke that he has started thinking is very funny. That he'll like start talking about something he saw online, and my wife will be like, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll see it on Instagram in 3 months."
That's hilarious. And he's right.
He's 100% right.
Because you know what's funny? Yesterday I got a Facebook reel sent to me, and I had seen that on TikTok and then on Instagram, and now so that's even like, talk about lag.
I was gonna say I'm just now finding out that Facebook has Reels. That's
right?
Fantastic. I knew that, but nobody.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, so then small group, like, and I would encourage your small group leaders have group text, and all of that is like ways. The end of the day, the reason I'm so passionate about hybrid is not like, oh, it's cool and cutting edge and technology. It's more like, this is an opportunity to reach students where they are and beyond your service moments, your service times. And so you can text them on a Thursday after school and ask them how that test went. You can text them on a Monday morning, even in a group, and say, hey, I'm praying for a great week for you guys. You can send encouraging verses, all things we just didn't have the ability to do before the invention of technology. And so my challenge is just always encouraging churches and youth pastors to just not get stuck in the rut of only in person. There's so much more that the world has to offer, and that the world, frankly, is already leaning into. We as a church just have to find a way to catch up to it. So
good.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, that's all we got. Anything else?
That's
Any
it.
final words, Josh?
Drink your milk. I feel like we've lost that one. Like that was when I was little. They were like, drink your milk, you get strong bones. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't feel like I've heard anyone tell me that in a long time. So I just want to share that with everyone else.
All right. I'll leave you with that wisdom. Until next time, everyone, stay hybrid.
Later.